Hi. My project this morning, or this week, is working on a 98 Ford Escort. I wouldn't have bothered trying to save this car, but it belongs to one of my family members, and they asked me to try to save it, see what I could do with it. So I did. I pretty much knew what was wrong with it. These cars are notorious for dropping intake valve seats. And when they do it, most of the motor self-destructs. And I really wasn't sure how bad it was. I told him I'd pull ahead and just see how bad things were and go from there. But I'll show you what I found. If you look at the intake valve in this cylinder, you can see it sets a lot lower than this one. That's because there's no longer a valve seat in there. It falls apart, breaks into little pieces, and then the piston comes up and just hammers the hell out of everything. I mean, just beats it to death. And that's usually the extent of the damage. Of course, the top of the piston ends up the same way. It'll just keep pounding those little pieces around in there until everything just self-destructs. What I didn't expect was this. How about that? The piston just blew up. Broke into lots and lots of little pieces. I guess this is not unusual either. So, after I pulled the piston out, I gave it a lot of thought, and I talked to people who own this thing, and the cylinder wall is not damaged. And there's a guy in Wisconsin that has used pistons and connecting rod assemblies for these engines, because he makes a business out of repairing these. There's so many of them out there that he does that on like a sideline. So I got a new piston connecting rod assembly on the way. I probably need to change the rod bearings. This one's showing a little copper on the bottom there. That's not good. A lot of wear. This is the top half. But what may happen when the piston self-destructed, it may have damaged that. But I'm going to check the other ones too while I got it apart. So this is what I'll be doing this week. Once I get all this reassembled, I'll let you know how it all turns out. I don't know how I got involved with this, but sometimes you have to do things for family that you wouldn't ordinarily do. But cylinder wall is undamaged, and I don't see any damage to the crankshaft journals. We got a lot of cleaning up to do. There's a lot of metal around here. It didn't get in the other three cylinders, which sometimes happens, and it destroys everything. It happened on startup, actually. It wasn't going down the road when it let it loose. If it had, it would have been probably toast. But I will let you know what happens. I got a piston coming tomorrow. We'll get it installed, and then I'll order a rebuilt head, and we'll go from there. Well, this job's moving along. I got the piston installed. I got the guy from Wisconsin. I got the piston connecting rod assembly with the rings in it, and I cleaned it up and just used it as it came. So we got this all cleaned up, which was really tough. Getting all this cleaned off was a real chore. A lot of razor blade work. We've also got the rebuilt head from Heads International. It came today. I need to transfer all this, rockers, lifters, cam, from my head into this one. It looks okay. It has the exact same part number as the one I took off, so you have to assume it's going to be a good fit. Everything looks pretty clean. One thing I noticed different is that this head has spacers under the springs, and the old one does not. So I'm sure there was some reason for that. Well, I don't know what. So these little spacers here came on a new one, but those are hard to see here, but they're not on the old one. The chamber looks good. It's been resurfaced. I may or may not take his bluing off. It really doesn't make any difference, I don't think. Don't believe it matters. But I got a lot of work to do. You know, I got all the studs to transfer to this head, all the exhaust manifold, intake manifold, you know, camshaft lifters, rockers. I mean, it's going to take me a while to get this all together, to get it ready to put on. And I'll putter with it every day until I get it finished up. These little intake butterflies that are on these engines, I don't remember what this is called. There's a name for that. I gotta tell you, this was really, really gummed up. I mean, there was a 1/16 of an inch of carbon, whatever it was, both sides, really thick. A lot of elbow grease, a lot of brake cleaner, carb cleaner, anything I could find to get that cleaned up. That was a real job. So things are moving ahead. I'll get these together. Once I get all this stuff transferred, drop the head on, I'll probably video some more. I need to clean up the intake manifold yet. Make sure there's no pieces of metal in there. Then we'll get the rest of this done. Got a new gasket set, all new bolts came with it. So we're ready to move on. I hope we get this all together. Another week or so. Well, I got intake and exhaust studs all installed, and there was a problem. You know, when I put these through a cleaning solution, it tends to leave a residue in the threads. And of course I give it a coat of paint, which even makes it worse. I couldn't get any of these studs started. Every hole had to be tapped, re-tapped, cleaned out. So remember when you do that, all of them. Even these small ones in the front, the 6mm, you got to clean those out. If you won't be able to get those bolts in. You won't be able to get them started. And the same with these bigger ones. There's 3 of them. Go around, clean them all out, re-tap them carefully, because you don't want to strip anything out. But that's what I had to do to get them studs in. All those threads had to be chased with a tap. Well, I got the cam and all the lifters out of my old head, and I am ready to put my cam in the new head. Problem is, it won't go in. You know, when I put this thing through a cleaning process, I told you it leaves a little residue on the aluminum, and I had to chase all the threads to get all these studs in because they would not go in. I'm having the same problem with the cam. Where the bearings are, it feels real rough. It's probably from the cleaning chemicals, and the cam will not go in. It gets in to the second journal in here and it gets stuck. And of course it's got to rotate freely when I put it in there. So now I got to find some way to clean up those journals. Alright. Well, the cylinder head people warn you that you got to clean everything out, intake and exhaust, if you had a drop valve seat, because there's probably pieces of metal in there. Sure enough, look in there. There are. Just have to be totally flushed out. There's metal in every port. As you can see. I just don't want it filled, all of them. So, need that warning. You gotta clean everything out. Intake and exhaust. EGR valve tube. You gotta look everywhere. If this gets back in your combustion chambers, after all this hard work, you end up just blowing the whole thing up again. So, I got a big job here. I'll clean this up. Well, we got the head ready to go back on. I'm waiting for my helper to arrive. I need a little hand with this to get it on there with all the manifolds on. The manifolds are really difficult to install after the head's on there, so just like I took it off, we'll put it back on the same way. Just makes for a pretty big and awkward package. But I guess we'll manage. Got the new bolts. Ready to set it on there. Got everything cleaned up here. And glad to start getting us back together. It's been a long haul. Well, we got it in. Got everything torqued down. Now we got to put together all the little things. I ran into a glitch. I got a little hold up because I need a gasket. The head gasket set came with the gasket for this end for the EGR valve tube for bolted exhaust manifold. It did not come with this gasket for the EGR valve bolts and intake manifold. So I got to run to the parts store and get one of those so I can put this on, so I can start putting everything else on that side. So I can start working on the other side, timing belt back on, and you can get all this buttoned up. I've done this before, so it should go pretty quickly. I've had all this apart one other time to change a water pump and the timing belt. All went together good so far. See what happens when I fire it up. Well, we got it running. Yeah, it's running pretty good. No leaks. Seems to run pretty smooth. So, I guess first project is done. Drive around a little bit more. Make sure everything's okay. Just hope it lasts. That's something we won't know for a while. I did forget to mention that I changed the rod bearings in this car. This is the one that, this upper rod bearing of the piston that got smashed. It's really in bad shape. The rest show quite a bit of wear. So I changed all the rod bearings while I had the oil pan down. It didn't take long. Let's hope those last. Probably if I was going to do anything different, in hindsight, I probably would have bought the head with the cam and lifters already installed. I'm concerned about a number of all the time I put into switching all that stuff over. It wasn't as easy as they said it was. I could save myself a lot of grief. If it was only $50 more, I think I would go that route. But that's it. I think we're good to go.